Got the shop truck pulled out here, and we are starting to mount the new turbo on this first gen here. So this is that HX40 Super. Just gonna try to get that on here. I'll try to get the intake on it today, get everything buttoned up here. So hopefully tomorrow, depending on the schedule, we can get it in the shop and try to finish up the rest of the stuff on it before it leaves for the weekend. Alright, so I got the bolts ran up. I just gotta snug them. I don't know if I showed you guys yet this morning. I slammed my thumb in the door of my truck. This is what happens when you have me up early in the morning. It's been pretty cool in the mornings, so we've been starting at like 6 the last couple days just to try to get off early and be done before it gets hot out. But it also means that I'm pretty much a zombie for the first couple hours a day, and that's how you end up closing your thumb in a car door. Good time. So we're going to clock the turbo a little bit here. Now, first off, they did machine the V-band off here, so we can use a silicone coupler to this intake. The other thing that's nice that they do, if you see these tabs sticking out here, you can actually grab these with a regular pair of like channel locks. You don't have to get a pair of snapping pliers in there. Pull the snap ring in to reclock this housing. So that was pretty nice of them. They try to get it as close as possible, but I think the only part of the old turbo that's been reused is the core. The exhaust housing was damaged. We had a leak, and it was actually from damage to the housing. Like I said, it's a whole new front half. So if they did reuse anything, it would have just been the core of the turbo. There we go. It's reclocked. Just a dead blow and a pair of channel locks is all it took to reset that thing. Alright, so the turbo is pretty much mounted up. We just have one issue. So this is a new center section. The threads for it are a different size than the ones that are on the oil feed line. So I'm going to have to figure out what threads those are. Pretty sure they're quarter pipe. And then we'll see about just getting a whole new oil feed line made up for this thing. Might as well replace it instead of just putting an adapter on the old line. What?
I'm ready to put windows.
Oh, sweet. Huge shout out to IHI here in Indianapolis. So we ran into a really bad spot today trying to get the oil line for this truck made. And they custom made this line for me while I waited. I mean, it took a little while. I had all 3 parts guys there to get it figured out. This is the line that we had, but the new turbo uses a different style of threads, and I mean, they hooked it up. I probably wasted quite a bit of their time today, but it's less than 50 bucks, so I can't argue with that. That's amazing service. And I know a lot of times when we get into custom stuff like this and not off the shelf, where it takes a couple people and a lot of thinking and digging through parts bins and stuff, I mean, that's not where they make money. They probably lost money dealing with me on that, but they're just as happy to do it and get it taken care of. Great hydraulic shop. If you guys are in the Indianapolis area, IHI is the place to go. Got our custom made oil line on there. We've also started wiring up the new coolant temp sensor. The wire for the pyrometer is already ran into the cab, and I've got the gauge pod here. Everything is zip tied in place on the back side of it. And then this is everything that's coming out of it. The green wires for the coolant temp sensor, that black nylon line there is the boost line, and then the pyrometer's wiring harness will just run up in back here and hook to the pyrometer, which is this one. So now I'm going to start taking apart the stock A-pillar and get this one mounted in place. Alright, so I still got to get the gauges all wired. This old gauge that's in here needs to get pulled out. The brake pedal's held up right now because we need to bleed it. It falls and it leaves brake lights on. So I've got the radio wiring all pulled out. That is where I'm going to grab most of the wiring for the gauges on the truck. I still need to come in here and clean up my wiring. This all needs to get loomed. This is the ground. I'm going to run it to the firewall. We did start it up and run it, and as you guys saw, we still have some issues with smoking. We got it cleaned up a lot at idle. It's idling nice and clean now, so we're going to try to do a little bit more work on the pump tuning to see if we can clear up some more of that. But I've already had the conversation with the owner, and he's obviously aware of this. This truck has over 500,000 miles on it. This engine has never been rebuilt. The injection pump has never been replaced. And we are pushing a lot of fuel right now through that pump. So there are two possibilities to what's causing that. Either we have a cylinder that is lower compression than the rest that is causing that smoking, or we're overrunning the capabilities of that injection pump. Now, either one of those is a very strong possibility, but at this point I'm leaning a little bit more towards the injection pump due to the randomness of it. It does it in a certain range and then clears up as it's going higher. Now, compression's pretty constant as we go. I mean, we shouldn't be randomly picking up and losing compression like that. So we're going to try to do a little bit more tuning once we can get it running a little longer tomorrow. Today we mainly just got it started to check these new oil lines to make sure, put my shut-off board out of the way, to make sure that all the new plumbing is good on the turbo, that we didn't have any issues with this new turbo. It sounds pretty crazy. This turbo is made to whistle. It's made to be loud. You know, it was custom spec'd for exactly what the owner wants with this truck. So we're happy to see the new turbo is working good. I do have a new intake that's going to run through here. It's a 4-inch tube. It's going to put a giant filter right here in the fender well. That'll be on our list for tomorrow. Tidying up the wiring tomorrow. I got to change some fluids, bleed the brakes tomorrow. I think that's going to about do it for this truck for right now. That'll get us at least caught up on our punch list. I do have parking brake cables to put in it, but I don't have an empty lift right now to be able to do that on. And to get the rear drums off this, the hubs come off. So I really want to do that on a lift. But bunch of progress over the last 2 days on this truck since the turbo came back. It's been sitting for a while because we've been waiting on this turbo to get back from Turbo Lab. And pretty happy with it so far. We just saw a little bit of exhaust leak too, I noticed on the backside. Now we had a problem with that on the last turbo. And what they ended up finding was this exhaust housing, that's actually kind of warm still, it hasn't ran in a minute, was bad. No part of this is the old turbo that we sent in. The updated center section, they replaced the exhaust housing because it was too damaged to machine the back of it up. It's an HX40 front housing that's been machined to remove the V-band, billet wheel. I mean, everything in that turbo has been done, but I'm still getting a little bit of a leak on the exhaust, so I need to pull it apart and check that out. This is a brand new Diamond Eye 4-inch exhaust on this truck. I just put that on a couple weeks ago, so I need to see if maybe we have an issue with the exhaust when they made it, because that is a brand new V-band clamp as well. So we'll figure that out as we go. It's not the biggest deal. That exhaust leak will fix one way or another. Right now the biggest concern is that raw diesel smoke that we're seeing and that little bit of a hesitation as it accelerates, at least as we run the RPMs up. Now that's all unloaded sitting here in the parking lot. We have not drove the truck yet. I really want to see it a little more stable before we actually take it out on the road to drive it. But maybe actually, well, I got it going here. So this is that intake tube for the truck. So this is going to hook to the turbo. It matches the crossover tube and the air filter mount here in the fender. So that's kind of where we're sitting at with this one for right now. We'll hop back on it tomorrow and get some more stuff done with it. And next up here, we have the Hungry Diesel BHAF intake. And this is the setup for this truck. So this clamp is actually supposed to sit in here somewhere. This is the tube for it. And it's going to go to the turbo. It mounts in the inner fender. So I've got the stock air box out. The bracket here for it comes out as well. We're not going to be reusing that. So what we are going to be doing is getting this down on the filter. It's actually supposed to sit over the mesh section of it. And then we're going to test fit this down here in the inner fender well so I can mark where we're going to have to put holes through to mount the band. Alright, so we got the mount here. It's not bolted all the way down yet. I still have to kind of loosen the fender. So now we're going to get the air filter back in here. And then we'll get the intake tube put in place. There we go. So there's the air filter in there. And this is just going to squeeze around it right about there just to hold the end of it and support it. So we get all the clamps set up, and we'll get this tube shoved back on here, and that should do it for the intake. I just got to mount that back up out of the way and we're good. And there's the intake system all mounted up. So we've just lightly got this clamp to hold this end of it in place. Nothing moves. It does sit a little tight on the alternator here, so I might see about loosening these couplers up and pushing the tube into the turbo just a little bit more. But this is only going to be on here just to drive it around to the back of the building. I've got to ground out 2 more wires, put the battery in it, then I should have working gauges, and we'll take it around back so I can finish getting the fluids changed on it. And we need to finish up the exhaust. We're going to change the rear hanger, then shorten that up, and then weld the tip on so the tip is flush with the body. So get that done here in just a minute. Made another adjustment to the power screw. Nothing like driving in the rain to get the final tuning done on it. So the reason that we're adjusting the fuel screw like we are on this kind of in slow increments is the EGT probe that came with that gauge set is actually not working. So without having a reliable EGT reading, we're really kind of being slow feeding the fuel into it until we know that we're happy with the setup. So we're trying to stay pretty conservative on the fueling until we have a better idea of what our EGTs are. You like it? Alright, so that's pretty much going to do it for the pump adjustments on the truck. We're pretty happy with where it's fueling and how it's running. It'll be back in a couple weeks here. I've got parking brake cables to put on it. I've got to fix some issues in the cluster with some gears being bad in it. We're going to put a new belt and tensioner on it, and then possibly put the next set of gauges in it, because those glow shifts were going to be just a temporary measure just to have gauges in them, and they're not even working out of the box. So we are going to see about getting some ISS Pros for it. But yeah, this truck got dropped off a couple months ago just wanting a fuel pin, a governor spring, and the rear brakes, and now the thing's a whole new animal.